Hello, everyone, and welcome to our circle and Salve Women. This is on my article, Perception Within the Eyes of Whose. And I started sharing with you a story where a student recently shared with me a time where their golf ball just accidentally rolled into someone's balcony. And this person loves to talk about golf. And you can, the golf attire that this person's wearing, it's very telling on the days that they are going to go and take off and play golf right after. And, it just warms my heart because those little snippets of times that we have after math where they're transitioning to go to another classroom, I know that in their mind, they have already rehearsed what they are going to say because they know that they have to be very quick about it before they move on to another classroom. And so many times there's a little bit of confessions that go in there. It's almost as if they're relieving themselves of some of the thoughts that they were holding in, and then when they get it out, I'm so grateful that they entrust me with it, because then when they move on, it's like, okay, it was said, and who am I to judge? And so it's interesting because when the students said, if a ball was to ever hit a window and break a window, we would have to run because we have no insurance. And then I think to myself, how many of us, if not all of us, take risks and realize that yes, there are some very scary outcomes of whatever situation that we put ourselves into, and yet we have to journey into the possibility of not having anything go wrong, and thinking to ourselves, we just have to think positively and just go about it, because if I don't do this, I will never know the beauty that could come from it all. And so I think about our climate shift, and yes, that's, people talk about the weathers are changing, and there's definitely, some headlines that I see where there's tragedies everywhere, right? And yet, how many of us then just say to ourselves, well, we saw it coming, and yet we know that this may come again, but look how many beautiful days, years that have really passed us until this came about. And so we take these risks knowing that they can occur. And I think about the earthquakes and the fracking that's going around, that is, people fight against it, and yet there are people that know that they have a purpose for them. And also with the forest fires, we know we could be hiring people to rake some leaves out in the forest, and yet the beautiful bedding that it creates as we walk through and hike through all those forests, and the dryness of weather, just, we know it's inevitable. And there are just things that we take that risk in, but does that make us foolish, or does this make us full of faith, is what I think. Is we want to dance and play like a child, and we know when we bump our head, we're going to be crying, pain's real, and yet we aren't going to stop dancing. We aren't going to stop playing like a child. And I know it sounds foolish, but I see it throughout the world. And that is something that my heart, my mind, my body, my spirit have witnessed and felt, and really have come to know that, having learned so much from my own children and my students, and just, they teach you so much of just that strong faith. And really, in my article of saying, you have to see what you want to believe. And it's not as if we're the Thomas, in that we have to first see to believe. But what I'm saying there is that you enable for you to just live to the best of your ability of a fearless life. That faith has to be so much stronger than just the hope. Hope is good, but then to be even beyond that, and having the strongest faith of all, is saying to yourself, what I see in my mind is what's going to happen. And I'm not going to worry about what can happen that could be detrimental, that could cause this to just go in different direction than I would hope for it to go. I'm still going to pursue, and I'm still going to keep going in the path that I know I should be taking. And so I think about people who build these beautiful homes on top of a hill, and then all of a sudden the tragedies. I mean, I've seen it happening in my state, driving by a freeway where there's these beautiful homes. All of a sudden their home started to tilt because it wasn't built on strong foundation. You know, they took that risk, and for whatever reason that they did, I think to myself, that's when you look back and go, well, did we had beautiful moments in that home, and it was beautiful when it lasted, and here we are having to face the consequences of it, but we took that risk. And I truly believe that when you get on a roller coaster, and again, as I mentioned in my article, is, you know, we like roller coasters, and some of us don't, and some of us can't anymore because we become lightheaded and life just changes. I get that. But, you know, some of us like watching people on a roller coaster. Some of us like being part of the thrill. Some of us like witnessing the thrill. It's just this theme that continues to change, perhaps the background, the maintenance of the ride, and so forth, but it's still a roller coaster regardless. And so we have Sir Isaac Newton to thank about the law of gravitation, which, by the way, love that he's always saying, that he has been noted to say that there's really nothing new, right? We just innovate. We pick up from what's already existed. And, you know, speaking of just the recent book I read on the writings of God, the writings of the gods, you know, it's amazing that he had spoken of, very briefly, he was mentioned in there, that how in the world could we say that we've actually invented, when you look at, you know, the Egyptian pyramids, and yet to this day it can't be explained of how they were actually built. So that's something to think about. And you know, when you think about it, it's like, yes, we're creating all of these inventions, but really we're innovating from all of these great minds that have come together. And I know when I see all these new businesses and I see all these new creations, they ramify from someone else's. I mean, I, having created some things for myself, and, you know, all of these creations and innovations that are going in my head, I know I was not the forefather of it. It's just something more of like, wow, it would be great to have this. Wow, I think I could do that. I think I could make that, or, you know, or I can make that better. And then here we are seeing all of that and that cyclical piece of the world, you know, where we can now manipulate. You know, you hear countries that can manipulate rain. I mean, it's just, you know, amazing how a mind, when I read the book, We Do Things Differently, when you ask a person who has no other choice but to succeed, was a piece that I really got from that book. It's like, you can create stuff if you really told yourself you had no other choice but to do so. And so in this amazing life that we're in, we really have to think of it in that way and think to ourselves, okay, so my student should not be playing golf around houses. But why do they build golf courses around houses in their backyards, you know? So maybe he should be going out to where it's away from houses. But how much fun is it to be in, you know, just out in the pasture, perhaps, where they see that it's a different type of layout than just out where you could just hit the ball over and over with netting around you. You know, I mean, that again is just choices, right? Like building your house on top of a hill, or, you know, looking at just all the beautiful forests in this world that perhaps need to all be raked in dry heat. And yet we like all the leaves to fall onto the ground, and we don't think about that, or we perhaps do, and then just hold on to that faith and saying, let's just enjoy the beauty. And yes, when the tragedies happen, they become very tragic. And, you know, all of what happens after that becomes very real. And then there are, of course, regrets of what has then occurred and all the many cleanups that we have to do thereafter. And yet we have to ask ourselves, do we live in fear having lost, or do we live in fear to lose? And then you have to ask, are we not both, depending on the situation? And so in writing this article, I really think about that, because you have to put yourself in different situations. You grow up, you're so judgmental for so long in your life, and then you go through so much and you go, hold on, how come, I haven't played golf, and what stops me? And when I say that, I mean, I really analogize that, what's holding you back from fearing hitting a window, from fearing to get into trouble, or what is it that holds us back from doing what we want to do in life? And it's not to say that we want to be foolish, crazy, and to a point where we're willing to sacrifice our life and get hurt. But I get that there are those that say, this is my joy. This is what I see as beauty. This is what I see as something that makes me complete. And I am willing to take in all the consequences I may face, because it wouldn't be me to do without it. And so we ride these roller coasters, and as generations continue to evolve, and we will have been the ones at the very end of that to look back, how many of us would then say, I should have been playing golf. I should have really taken in that risk. And yes, we should be insured, for sure. But again, who are we to judge when we don't? And those are my thoughts for today. In the words of my mother, God bless us all, may we really have that understanding of faith, of knowing that what you see is not always what anyone else can see, but that joy in your heart wants to be filled with the reality of it, because if you concoct it here and here, then you want to be able to see it here come about in this world, so you can share your joy that's coming from inside of you with everyone else. How else can we continue to innovate? As Sir Isaac Newton would say, all the things that have been created, nothing is new. We just continue cyclically, just for the sake of enjoyment and for the sake of saying, I can do that, but I can do that even better. Let's just be about the faith. And yes, hold ourselves accountable when things go wrong, but then at the same time, don't hold back just because you fear of the wrong. Continue to work on to the right and stay in that light. Let's have a great day, everyone. And again, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.